that we are not simply talking about, for instance, people airing a controversial view in a seminar.
We don't know this.
We do. We do know this in the case of somebody like Khalil.
Well, there are ways in which you can charge people with crimes. You can charge him with trespassing if you want. You can charge him with any number of things and then proceed to deport the person.
And they should have been charged when they were smashing up property and harming caretakers and much more.
We don't know that he did. We have a rule of law.
Okay,
you can't just...
Okay, well, I have a rule of thumb as well. I loathe this case, this guy, Mahmud Khalil, because, as I say, he's becoming like a folk hero. He's going to have a due process. His case is going to be heard. It's going to be heard, interestingly enough, in New Jersey. And this, what is he now, 30 years old? And his pregnant wife, who's going around saying, my husband was kidnapped, and she's going around saying, that
he's in Louisiana now.
He wakes up to cold mornings and sees the injustices. Right. Sorry. I have no care for that or to hear Khalil's name until everyone's lips have the name of Eden Alexander, who was born in New Jersey, who is an American citizen, who was kidnapped by Hamas on the 7th of October. And I do not hear left or right-wing commentators talking about the case of Eden Alexander and the fact that he has now spent a year and a half in an actual dungeon, having actually been kidnapped by actual terrorists. And if I saw a vast movement of Americans and judicial experts and people wanting to interpret this, having talked for a year and a half about his case, now talking about the finessing of the case of Khalil, I would be much more open to hearing it. But we are talking all the time in America, as in other Western democracies, always about the rights of people like Khalil, who come to the United States, act as these wild sort of apologists, where not spokespeople for a death cult like Hamas, seem to give nothing to America whilst they're here, stir up activities on campuses and elsewhere. I mean, sorry, this guy also was living in student accommodation. He's not even a dance student. But weirdly enough, he and his pregnant wife are living on student accommodation, which presumably means that they're benefiting from the taxpayers' largesse as well. And he can, at the very least, let's say, he can cover for if he's not openly supporting. And I think all the activities at Columbia and elsewhere where Jewish students are chased across campus being told to go back to Poland and much more. I'm sorry, I don't think this country needs a massive amount of energy to be expended on somebody who's come in and on a green card is stirring up this kind of racial hatred, and ignore an American citizen still sitting in an underground tunnel somewhere in Gaza after being actually kidnapped after 1.5 years of torture. And if people had the decency to be consistent on that first one, I might care about the finessing of the rights of somebody like Khalil. But he has done nothing to show that he adds to the United States of America. He has done nothing to show that he's a benefit to this country. Why should, of all the people around the world who would love to come to this great country, why should there be such a defense of somebody who hasn't just not brought anything to America, but has undermined other very, very important things in America? I would love to see if there was this same outpouring of care about this niche corner of this niche case of this nasty piece of work, if it was any other minority in this country who he was attacking and his friends were attacking. I do not think that there would be this massive upsurge of support on the left or the right and the exercising of all of this if what had happened was that somebody had come in on a green card and he'd been advocating the lynching of black Americans. No, I don't think that would be the case. These people have no sympathy for an American citizen held hostage. They have no interest in that. They have not said the name of Eden Alexander for 1.5 years.
All right,
no,
I understand.
This maddens me because right and left.
You can say double standards exist. They do exist, right? Double standards exist everywhere, but they have existed in this case. But it's still the point. It's
not just double standards. It's a total missing of priorities.
Well,
Get your American hostages back and wonder why you've got foreign students coming in advocating for the group that's kidnapped the Americans.
It seems to me, Douglas, if you wanted to change this, you should have a much stricter visa approval process. This is the way you do it. You weed out anyone who has an opinion critical of Israel or of...
No, you don't need to do that.
Well, what about this poor woman, Ozturk?
Well, you
what
don't
about
need
this
to do
poor
that.
woman who, as far as we can tell, wrote one op-ed?
We'll have to see what happens with her case.
Well, they're all in jail now indefinitely.
We'll see what
Khalil is not going to get his for months. He's stuck in Louisiana.
We'll see what happens hopefully when the due process occurs on these cases. But it seems to me the bare minimum, and Marco Rubio made this point last week.
There's no due process. When you invoke that 52 law, the whole point is...
How many more
You don't have to prove anything.
How many more terrorist supporters does the U.S. actually need?
Well, how much free speech does America need? That's the question.
No,
the question is, obviously, free speech is only important when really vile things are said. That's when you need to defend it the most, right? So it seems to me that if you just... Let's take your point entirely about double standards. Let's agree with that. But if you care about the ability for Americans to speak and discuss freely...
For Americans?
Well, people who are legally in America, who have
But you agree that there's a very distinct difference between those two things.
Not in terms of free speech. There isn't under the Constitution of the United States. There just isn't. Free speech is non-negotiable for everyone, every person in the United States, not citizen, person. So they are legally here, and they're being told that there's some things they cannot say, some feelings they cannot express, problematic views. Now,
as I said,
don't you see the resonance? Don't you see how that is part of what the left was doing to free speech in this country? Well, if you have a problematic view,
look, as I said, problematic is an idiotic term.
Well, they don't have any other terms to use.
It's a left-wing wokist term, which I could do without ever having to hear again. And I certainly don't want to hear it from the right. I don't want to hear it from the Trump administration. Problematic. Give me a break.
But they don't have a crime to charge.
Well, they should make sure that they've got their ducks in the row before they do this. Sure.
Okay.
You and I are agreed on that. You and I are agreed on that.
Due process, figure out if someone has committed a crime, charge them, deport them. I am absolutely okay with that. I'm also okay with, I'm just don't like nebulous words like problematic views or problematic behavior or activities against the foreign policy. It's just, they're so vague.
Yeah,
they could throw anybody out on those grounds.